We are already heading into week 2 of the NFL season. Let's talk about our wide receiver ranks. The number one thing that I want to cover on these ranks is we're not panicking. There's a couple players that had some bad week ones. We're not going to overreact and we're not going to panic. The rankings that we cover today will be in tiers, groupings of guys. So, for example, in the first tier, I'm going to have Jamarr Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Puka Nacua. There's not a lot of situations where you need to make a pick between those. And a lot of the situations where you might need to would be something like a fan duel that has different values associated with these. For your lineups, if you have these guys, you're starting them. We're not going to make too many decisions based on any sort of matchups with these guys. We're starting our studs. Let's head into tier 2, where we have Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Malik Neighbors. And this is one of the first examples where we're not overreacting. Brian Thomas Jr. was wide receiver 4 last year. It didn't smash hit in week 1 of this year. He had 1 reception. He had a rushing touchdown. I'm ready to go right back to Brian Thomas Jr. this week. Same thing with Nico Collins playing the Bucs. The Bucs have a good defense, but I'm expecting Nico Collins to bounce back from what we saw in week 1. Yeah, it didn't come out amazing against the Rams. That offense got shut down quite a bit. The Texans don't have a great offensive line, but they have a good enough offensive line to win you fantasy matchups and to make Nico Collins a great receiver. Maybe it's not good enough to win a Super Bowl, but that's not what we care about in fantasy. Other players in this tier, Amon-Ra St. Brown, slow start against the Packers in week 1 for the Lions. I'm ready to go right back to the well. That talent, I think, will win out. And Malik Neighbors playing the Cowboys. He's still just commanding such a target share in this Giants offense that I'm not really concerned if it's Russ starting, if it's Jackson Dart starting, if it's Jameis Winston starting. He's going to be getting 30+% targets in this offense. That's just a massive win. He's going to be a start most weeks. Tier 3, I've got Drake London and A.J. Brown. Guys that may be dealing with some injuries, but if they're playing and they're going, they will be in my lineup. I can't get away from Drake London in basically any situation. Maybe if I was in an 8-team league, I may find a way to get away from him. But if he's starting on Sunday, I will be playing him. Same thing with A.J. Brown. Bad week in week 1. I've seen him be successful against the Chiefs. I'm ready to go right back to him. A lot of the things people are saying about the Eagles existed last year. The Jalen Hurts doesn't throw. He didn't throw a ton last year, and A.J. Brown was still very, very valuable for fantasy. I'm ready to go right back to the well with A.J. Brown. My next tier of receivers, this would be tier 4, is JSN, Ladd McConkey, and Garrett Wilson playing the Bills. Here we're just looking at target share for JSN. He's getting a huge portion of the passing for Seattle. Seattle had a rough week 1 against the 49ers, but JSN was almost all of the passing offense. I would not be surprised if he finished this year over 30% target share for Seattle. He's going to be a weekly start for me. Ladd McConkey, we might worry about Keenan Allen moving into a bigger role with the Chargers, but I think that just opens up the passing offense. It's just a larger pie. So we're adding to the total passing yards and pass attempts. So even if Ladd McConkey's percentage takes a step back, it's just way more passing yards for this offense. The Chargers were not ready to lean on Najee Harris. They weren't totally ready to lean on Omarion Hampton in week 1. Hampton was out there for 80% of the snaps, but this was a pass-first offense in week 1. I don't know that it will stay that way throughout the season, but I expect this team to score a lot. This is a good offense. Greg Roman is a good offensive coordinator. I'm ready to go to Ladd McConkey basically every week. The last player in this tier, Garrett Wilson. This is just going to be a target share thing. Garrett Wilson on the Jets has been a 1,000-yard receiver every year of his career with some really bad quarterback play. What I saw from Justin Fields, though, was he can support a wide receiver 1, and the offense is going to go through Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields on the ground, and Breece Hall. Other players might get small ancillary roles, but for fantasy football, Garrett Wilson is basically a weekly start. On to tier 5. Tier 5. These are basically must starts heading into borderline flex tier. And a lot of these flex, if you're playing any of these players in the flex, it's going to cross over pretty high in the running backs, and we'll talk about it. So in this tier, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. playing the Panthers. The Panthers defense does not scare me at all. Marvin Harrison is fired up. If you're ever worried about starting Marvin Harrison, I could understand that in tougher defensive matchups, but this is not one of them. We're lighting him up, and he is going. T. Higgins, I'm expecting a bounce back against the Jags, excuse me. The Jags defense, again, not a scary matchup. The Bengals, we've seen year over year, have really rough week ones. I don't know that that's something I want to predict every year, but we've seen it the past couple of years. And then we've seen this offense be great basically after week one. Last week against the Browns, the Bengals, they did not have the ball that often. The Browns' way of trying to win this game was control the clock, hold the ball, and then play good defense. And the Browns have a good defense. We worry about the Browns as an NFL team because they're starting Joe Flacco. The receiving core isn't great. Overall, it's not an amazing lineup, but they have a good defensive line, and they were able to disrupt the Bengals last week. The Jags, not so much. I think we can expect to see the Bengals get back to scoring, holding the ball about as much as their opponent and scoring. So I'm not worried about T. Higgins. I'll fire him up for this game. Mike Evans is in this tier. Mike Evans led the team in air yards, or had more air yards than Emeka Egbuka. If we're looking at an offense that is Evans, Egbuka, maybe some Sterling Shepard, I don't think that every touchdown this year is going to go to Emeka Egbuka. Mike Evans is still a great red zone threat. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw 2 touchdowns for Mike Evans and no touchdowns for Emeka Egbuka. Is anyone going to be surprised if that happens? Not really. So I'm ready to go back to Mike Evans. Terry McLaurin in this tier is, again, if we're crossing over to flex options, he's going to be started over most running backs that you might consider in the flex. I would start him over Travion Henderson, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne. That's kind of the crossover point that we have here with Terry McLaurin for the Commies on Thursday night against the Packers. In the past couple of years, when we've seen players hold out in training camp, that does often lead to a slow start for them early in the season. But Terry McLaurin in this offense, he was out there running a lot of routes. It just wasn't the ball going his way. There were a couple deep shots to him that did not connect. It doesn't worry me for Terry McLaurin going forward. You kind of just got to take the hit in the first 1 to 2 weeks, and then we expect him to get back to around what he was doing last year. Last year was a great touchdown year, but I would expect 80 receptions for Terry McLaurin this year and 1,100 yards still, and a slow week one coming out of a holdout doesn't take me off of that pace. I think he'll still be on that pace with just a slower start to the season. I'm ready to go back to Terry McLaurin. Last player in this tier, Courtland Sutton. He's going to be about the textbook definition of wide receiver 2. He's playing the Colts this week. That matchup doesn't scare me. Bo Nix had a rough first game. I don't think Bo Nix is an amazing talent, but the system that Sean Payton has, the offensive players there, it's enough to support Courtland Sutton. I'm ready to go back to Courtland Sutton in this tier. Ricky Pearsall, DK Metcalf, Ted McMillan, Deebo Samuel, and Emeka Egbuka. Even if Brock Purdy were to miss time and not play in this game, I think Mac Jones can get the ball to Ricky Pearsall. The 49ers play the Saints. I think it's a really good matchup. I really like Ricky Pearsall as one of the lead options there without George Kittle. Give me Ricky Pearsall. DK Metcalf playing the Seahawks. It's a tough matchup for the Steelers, but I'm still expecting this offense to flow through Aaron Rodgers to DK Metcalf. Even in a hard matchup, give me DK Metcalf here. Ted McMillan playing the Cardinals. It's just a defense that hasn't shown that they should be feared. Maybe in future years with the defensive head coach, they will, but give me Ted McMillan as the lead option. I think Bryce Young bounces back quite a bit. Some of the interceptions that we saw from Bryce Young were tipped passes. And if we have a couple of those happening in a game, it will shut down the offense. I like Ted McMillan to take another step forward in his rookie season. Other players in this tier, Deebo Samuel, tons of targets. I think that will help with the defense of the Packers. And then finally, this is where I would have Emeka Egbuka. He showed out great in week 1, 2 touchdowns. I don't know that touchdowns repeat, but they've shown they will trust him. I was worried about the Bucs maybe leaning on a veteran guy like Sterling Shepard, who had the same amount of targets as Emeka Egbuka. I think as we get week, and we start mounting these up, Egbuka takes on a larger role over Sterling Shepard. And I think we see that in week 2. The next group of players that we have, Davante Adams, Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill. Now we're starting to get into some of the players that had down week 1s that I'm not sure that I want to just go straight back to, like Tyreek Hill. Or we're getting into players that had amazing week 1s, but I'm still not ready to boost them up to full weekly starters. This is starting to get into the flex range. And I might look at the crossover here with Davante Adams against David Montgomery, or Zay Flowers versus DeAndre Swift. And in a lot of these situations, I'm going to go with the wide receiver, but that's about the crossover. Davante Adams, not an amazing week 1. I'm still willing to go back to him in most weeks as a wide receiver 2 or a flex option. The talent is still there. This offense does go through Puka Nacua, but we're not buying Davante Adams or drafting him to be a wide receiver 1 anymore. We're expecting him to be a wide receiver 2. I think he'll still have a chance at a touchdown. This passing offense is really just those two guys, Puka and Davante Adams. Zay Flowers plays the Browns this week. I don't know that the Ravens are going to score 40 points again this season. And when we look at what Zay Flowers has done in the past couple of years, he has big games. Week 1 against the Bills was the best game of his career, but he's had very good games followed up by 2 catch-it games. So I'm still a little timid with Zay Flowers. I'm not ready to run straight back to him and lock him into my lineup. Maybe in his 3rd year, this is the big breakout, and we see him finish as, a top 15 wide receiver for fantasy football. But I'm still a little shaky on him. Chris Olave for the Saints plays against the 49ers. He is their passing offense. It's going to be Olave and then Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed based on what we saw in week 1. Kellen Moore runs a fast-paced offense, and a lot of it is targets to Chris Olave. He had 13 targets in week 1. I'm going to believe in that. I'm going to buy in on that. I don't know that it's 13 every week, but I think this offense is designed to flow through Chris Olave, who is very talented and just has had some issues in past years with concussions, rough quarterback play. The quarterback play there is fine enough to support Chris Olave, though. So he'll be in my flex in a lot of lineups. Other players in this tier, DJ Moore and Tyreek Hill. DJ Moore, he's still the lead guy for the Bears. It was a rough week 1 against the Vikings. I will go back to DJ Moore, and Tyreek Hill spooks me. One thing I've said with Tyreek Hill is when an older player shows you that they're reaching the end of their career, believe them. And when players retire, they say the injuries were adding up. And we've seen injuries adding up with Tyreek Hill late last year. He did not look great in week 1. This Dolphins offense didn't look great in week 1. I'm expecting them to change things up and bounce back, but I want to see it first. Hunter, I think that continues in week 2 and that he develops more as a player and takes on more targets in this offense. We've got a smaller next tier, Jameson Williams, Quentin Johnston for the Chargers. Kind of the same type of player. We're looking for big play opportunities here. Quentin Johnston runs deep routes, has had some issues with drops, and Jameson Williams is really a big play guy. These are boom bust options that if they hit, they can be week winning for you, but that it misses at a decent rate that I would be worried about them. Quentin Johnston plays on Monday night. If you have some configuration with who's starting in your lineup, maybe you're down after Thursday or down after the early games on Sunday, I would move Quentin Johnston up to a higher spot in your flex rankings if you need a big week. If you need, 2 touchdowns is going to win you the game. Quentin Johnston can get you 2 touchdowns. He could just also only get you 2 catches and really cost you. We're starting to move into deeper flex options here with this next tier. It's Michael Pittman, Jaden Reed, Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman, and Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle playing the Patriots. Like we were saying with Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins looked pretty rough. If you're scared of starting him, that's fine. I'm a little scared too. I've got him in this deeper tier, but it would not surprise me if Jalen Waddle and the Dolphins bounced back and then we were plugging in Waddle as a safer flex option next week. I just want to see it first. and there's a ton of wide receiver options. There's no buys right now. Everyone's healthy. We don't need to take that risk. Keon Coleman, does he continue with this breakout season? 11 targets last week and a touchdown. If you watched that touchdown, it was a weird play with the deflection. The ball not really targeting Keon Coleman in the end zone, deflected, and he catches it. I think you'd agree with me that's a low percentage to happen again. I like Keon Coleman for the breakout this year or a second year leap. I just don't know that it's 11 targets and as big of a role as it was last week. Rome Odunze had a slow start in his second year in week 1, caught a almost garbage time touchdown. The offense had some issues with timing and with penalties. We're hoping that gets cleaned up. The matchup against the Lions, still a little tough, but probably a little bit better than the Vikings, and we'll be in week 2 of this system. I like Rome Odunze. There's just plenty of guys that I would start before him. Jaden Reed playing the Commies on Thursday night. Jaden Reed had an amazing week 1 last year and then was basically unusable the rest of the season. I'm still not ready to buy in on Jaden Reed. I am ready to buy in on Michael Pittman most weeks, just not this week against the Broncos, who have a very tough defense with a shadow corner in Patrick Surtain who could shut down someone like Michael Pittman, and they might just move the offense to a different part of a different group of players. Could go through Tyler Warren, go through Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. They could try running, Daniel Jones running. I think they have enough options to just pivot away from Michael Pittman if he's fully shut down, which I think he could be. We've got a couple more tiers here that we'll cover. These are just last ditch options. Guys, I'm not excited to start, but the ranking that we have on the screen here is the ranking that I would have for them. That's Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte against the Dolphins. Diggs as the veteran option, Kayshon Boutte with a lot of targets last week. Let's see if that continues. This is someone I'm watching. I really don't want to be starting him if I don't have to, but I would have him ranked in this order. Romeo Doubs against the Commies. I don't really want to start him on Thursday. There's a ton of options I would put ahead of him, but if he's the lead option for the Packers, I think we could see him putting up decent fantasy points going forward in other weeks. I don't like the matchup of the Commanders defense though. And then we've got the Browns wide receivers, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy. I don't know how this is going to shake out from week to week. I don't know how much scoring this team in total wants to do. I think they've tried to play a lot of ball control and defense against the Bengals. That could be similar this week. I don't know that they'll be able to against the Ravens, though. I just don't know who would be the guy. Is it Tillman? Is it Jeudy? There's a chance it's just kind of both and not amazing for fantasy. We've got Khalil Shakir and Rashad Bateman here. There are weeks where they will hit, but a lot of the time when every player in the NFL is healthy and there's no buys, these are guys that are going to be odd men out. This last tier is Matthew Golden, Darnell Mooney, Alec Ayman, Xavier Legette, Jaden Higgins, Josh Downs, and Tyquan Thornton even a little bit after them as, yes, I've thought of these guys. Try not to start them. Some of these guys might be close to droppable, like Xavier Legette, maybe Tyquan Thornton. If you're in deeper leagues, this is about how I would rank them, but I'm trying to avoid these guys if I can. If you want to check out running back rankings, there will be a link on this screen where we also talked about some crossover points with flex rankings, etc. Thanks so much for checking this out. That's all.